Welcome back to Beyond the Uniform. I'm Justin Asiri, and my goal is to help members of the military community thrive in their post-service career and life. Today's episode number 442, Navy to PGA golfer with Billy Hurley III.
The best thing you can do is do your best in whatever you're doing at that moment in time, right? While being a service warfare officer didn't inherently gain me any greater skill as a golfer, I did the job as best as I could every day. And I think that's the mindset you're going to need whenever you go on to do whatever's next, right? And whether that's professional sports or business or government service in another capacity other than the military, whatever that looks like for each of us after the military, like, you're going to have to do your best to be successful. And so there's no reason to not do your best right now just because, well, this isn't what I really want to do, or I aspire to do X, Y, or Z later on.
Well, today's episode originally aired all the way back in June of 2019. That was 200 episodes ago. So I wanted to go back into our archives and surface this one for you. Here's why to listen. Billy is a professional golfer, the first Naval Academy graduate to earn a PGA Tour card, which he has done for the last 7 years. The more I learn about Billy's journey, the more I'm blown away by what he achieved. In a field that is crowded and incredibly competitive, Billy has succeeded despite having 5 years where instead of focusing 100% on golf like his peer set, he was serving in the military. In this interview, we talk about cultivating a mindset of excellence. Even though serving as a surface warfare officer didn't directly relate to his aspirations as a golfer, he focused on it 100% and did the best job he could. We talk about making sacrifices and how to balance that with being present with one's family. We talk about what life is like on the PGA Tour and more. As always, at beyondtheuniform.org, you'll find show notes with links to everything we discuss, as well as 440 other episodes just like this one, all offered for free. With that, let's dive in to my conversation with Billy. Joining me today in Annapolis, Maryland, my guest is Billy Hurley III. Billy, welcome to Beyond the Uniform.
Thanks, Justin. It's good to be with you.
So for listeners, I wanted to give you a quick background on Billy, but there's a lot of links in the show notes for more information about his background. He was a member of the victorious American team in the 2005 Walker Cup and served as captain of the 2004 Palmer Cup team. He won 7 collegiate golf titles at the Naval Academy, was named 2004 Patriot League Player of the Year, and was ranked the number 6 best amateur in the world. Billy was commissioned an ensign in the U.S. Navy, serving as a surface warfare officer for 5 years. After his naval service, he turned his focus back to golf. He earned his place on the Web.com Tour in 2011, finishing the season in 25th place and becoming the first Naval Academy graduate to earn a PGA Tour card. He has continued to be a strong competitor on the tour, winning the 2016 Quicken Loans National, a Tiger Woods-hosted tribute to military personnel. With the win, Billy qualified for his first PGA and Masters championships. So maybe just to set some context, Billy, could you talk about where your love of golf came from, like when that came about in your life?
Sure. I grew up kind of just around the game. My dad played in college and was a good player in his own right. And so when I was a young kid, my dad was still playing a lot with friends and kind of recreationally at that point. But my earliest memories of golf are riding around in the cart with my dad while he was playing with his friends, and I would maybe hit a couple of shots around, and while he was putting on a green, I would be chipping off to the side, trying to chip it into like the sprinkler heads and that kind of thing. So that's kind of where golf all started for me. It was, kind of a family deal with my dad, and then my brother, I'm a couple years older than my brother, so my brother got a little older. We started, all three of us were playing golf and that kind of thing.
Mm. And so, you are experiencing a tremendous amount of success while at the Naval Academy. One of the questions I had is, golf is such a time-intensive game. It requires a lot of practice and repetition. How are you able to continue, like maintain at least those skills while out at sea, while serving on active duty?
Yeah, I didn't. Is the answer to that question. Obviously, the Navy is a full-time job, and so maybe more than a full-time job in lots of times. And certainly when you go to sea, there's not really an opportunity to play and practice at all. So, there were periods of my naval service where I did get to play a lot. Maybe we were in home port or when I was on shore duty. But then there were periods, where we were out to sea deployed or training cycle, whatever have you, where I played very, very little. So, when I was out to sea, I just tried to really work out as much as I could, which anybody as a SWO knows that's not very much necessarily. But, that was kind of my focus out to sea, was at least having my body be in as good a shape as I could to be able to practice a lot when the practicing time came.
That's great. And I'm assuming, just given the success you experienced before joining an active duty, like that the plan was to return to golf after military service. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, as everybody, any 18-year-old who plays golf, kind of dreams about playing on the PGA Tour and whatever. And that was certainly not anything that resembled a reality or a possibility for me when I was 18, going into the Naval Academy. But I kind of just kept getting better and kept getting better and kept getting better. And then my senior year is when I had a lot of success on the golf course. And then kind of after my senior year, had some more good success kind of in that summer after graduating and going to my first ship, and so that's when it kind of became more of a reality that professional golf was something that could be out there for me. It was kind of in my senior year at the Naval Academy. And so yeah, I definitely graduated with the mindset of 5 years, and then I'm gonna go give golf a shot.
And just I'm fascinated by the mastery that you demonstrate in your field. Could you talk about maybe either the entire time at the Naval Academy or your senior year? When it came to golf, what did your life look like? Was there a routine, or how did you approach practicing in order to experience the growth that you experienced and the tremendous improvement in your game?
Well, I think that, for me at the Naval Academy, I sum it up like this. I woke up, I went to school, I went to golf practice, I came home, I came back to the dorm, I did my homework, I went to bed, and I woke up and did it all over again. I really, had a pretty singular focus. I was a pretty good student and for the most part enjoyed the classwork of college and of the Naval Academy, but golf was really kind of what I put my time and energy into. And so I spent most of my free time playing golf. I didn't really spend a whole lot of time goofing off or surfing the internet or watching TV or doing any of that kind of stuff. Of course, the internet really didn't quite exist in its current fashion when we were at the Naval Academy, Justin, but it still was you could do. So I didn't really have, I don't want to say I didn't have any interest. I just didn't put any energy into any interest other than golf. And, it started as a plebe. It started just as my escape. Like you could get out of Bancroft Hall and you could get over to the golf course and you could put on, golf clothes and not be in uniform. And I could be there and practice and nobody really bothered me, So it was kind of a little bit of escaping from the life as a plebe, and then it kind of just that said, it also was something I wanted to do. It was something that I wanted to put time and energy into, and so that kind of just continued. I made my summer training choices around golf, like what was best for golf. Mm-hmm. Like what tournament could I play? Oh, well, that means maybe I want to take this block and not that block or whatever, or, that kind of stuff. I spent, a lot of time, in the summers working on golf as much as I could. Obviously, with the training cycles of the Naval Academy summers, you don't put in as much time as every other Division I athlete does into their sport over the summertime. But I, was trying to do as much as I could in those times and taking advantage of all the time that I could. So it was really just, I don't want to say it was singularly focused, because I also, did work hard at school, and I did do all the things that were required of every other midshipman, kind of to the best of my ability while I was at the Naval Academy. But if you ask my roommates or ask my teammates, like, I pretty much just did golf.
I admire that discipline. I can only imagine the sacrifice that entailed. Is there, I'm sure that in that journey, there's got to be times where you're like, man, I don't want to do this. Like, did you have any way of getting yourself to kind of continue to focus on that? I'm just guessing there must have been times where, like, man, I'd much rather just be vegging out, or much rather doing something else. And I'm also guessing that you found a way to persist in spite of that. I'm just curious if you have any advice for listeners about strengthening their resolve, or maintaining a focus on a goal like that.
Well, I think that what I've learned in the last, 5 or so years of not just being a professional golfer, but getting to interact with a lot of successful people in the business world. Anybody who's kind of done something at an elite level, and certainly professional athletics are the easy one to point to, but you can point to guys who have 20, 30 year careers in the military as obviously being very elite, successful in that organization. You can point to CEOs, you can point to business leaders and that kind of thing who are successful in their own industries, and anybody who's gone on to do that has made a sacrifice, has made a rather big sacrifice in some way, shape, or form, and you kind of touched on that earlier. But so it's kind of just at the Naval Academy, I did not view what I was doing as sacrificing. For whatever reason, I don't know why, right? I don't know why, but if I look back at that, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the best golfer that I could be. And, so maybe I sacrificed, I sacrificed some of my class rank for that, because I didn't get, very good military performance grades, because if you're not in Bancroft Hall, you don't get seen, and you don't get kind of, recognized for being a midshipman. So I was often out of Bancroft Hall and out of sight, out of mind, and that kind of thing. But I didn't ever view that as really a sacrifice. I just viewed it as, this is what I want to do, and this is where I want to put my time and energy. I think the sacrifice for me came more after getting out of the Navy, and then having a family and having to leave and go on the road and having to go play tournaments when maybe I didn't feel like it, or maybe there's something going on at home that I'd rather be at, but but this is my job, and this is what I've chosen to do as a profession. And so the sacrifice has more been kind of on the back end, I would say. For me, on the front end, it was more a drive to be, the best I could be. And I was kind of always chasing after, what is that? I want to get a little bit better. I want to get a little bit better. I want to get a little bit better. And I mean, frankly, that's still what I do today. I want to get a little bit better. I want to get a little bit better. I want to keep growing in my profession and in my ability to compete at the highest level.
That's great. I mean, I appreciate that aspect too. It's kind of like, no matter what, to achieve that level of excellence, it requires some sacrifice, and it requires giving up a lot of comfort and giving up what you might want to do in the moment to achieve that longer term goal. And I also really appreciate that striving that's really clear, of like always wanting to see that incremental improvement, always fighting to be better. And I think it's easy to hear you say that, but I just can only imagine the countless hours behind that statement, and just the day in, day out attention to practice and attention to your craft. Could you walk us through? So you leave the military. What do the next couple of years look like for you? What does that path to becoming a professional golfer look like?
Well, we got out of the military in the summer of 2009, and basically for the next, well, for that summer, I just kind of went back to golf. It was the first time in my life when golf was the only thing I had to do. Previously it was I was at the Naval Academy and playing golf, but I had all the other stuff to do with coursework and the Naval Academy, and then I was in the Navy, and so golf was kind of a part-time job, certainly a quote moonlighting kind of gig at that point in time. But so getting out of the Navy and coming back to just golf was quite new, and so it was just play and practice every day. It was just trying to work on all aspects of my game and continue to get into golf shape in a sense. I mean, there's certainly I didn't play very much. I was actually deployed for the last 5 months that I was in the Navy, so I didn't play very much. Leading into that, it wasn't the greatest lead in to trying to play professional golf. So I had to spend that summer of '09 kind of just working on my game. And I remember in August I was like, well, I got to go play a tournament. I mean, I know I'm not really ready to play a tournament, but if I'm gonna be ready in October or November, I got to start now and got to go play again. And that was really hard because I missed all the cuts. I missed 3 cuts in the 3 tournaments I played kind of in August and September, and I think I missed 2 of them by like a shot. And you're kind of just, it was really frustrating to kind of feel like you're back in it, but you knew you weren't ready, but you were kind of close. And so, but so I spent kind of 2009, 2010 doing that on the mini tours. And then, and mini tours is kind of like, we'll call it single A baseball, if you will. And you kind of, nobody's making any money and everybody's just trying to play a little bit to survive, and you get some experience and kind of learn the lifestyle of traveling and whatever. But it was a lot of time in my car up and down 95 to tournaments, down in Florida and Charlotte and kind of the Carolinas and Florida, a lot of tournaments through the East Coast. So I know a lot about Route 95 from DC to Jacksonville. But the end of 2010, I got through Q school, not all the way to the PGA Tour, but I got to the Web.com Tour, what's now the Web.com Tour. And so 2011 then was my first year kind of in like AAA baseball, if you will. That's kind of what the Web.com Tour is kind of the feeder tour directly into the PGA Tour. So it's a little bit of the farm system kind of thing is the best way to explain it. And so that was my first year there, and then I was able to finish 25th and get kind of the promotion, so to speak, to the PGA Tour. And so then 2012 was my rookie year on the PGA Tour, and this year in 2019 is my 7th year on tour.
What's that like for people who, I mean, I'm imagining most people don't understand what that life is like. Could you describe what life was like on the PGA Tour, and especially kind of, what does your day to day and week, typical week even look like?
Well, on tour, a typical week, it's a 7-day week. It's not, there aren't, I leave, most of the time I probably, get to a tournament on Monday. And depending on what time I get in, I might practice briefly on Monday or something like that. But and then Tuesday's a really full day of practice, normally play 18 holes and practice, some after playing and kind of really seeing the course. And the nice thing now is that I don't have to learn the course. I've played most all of them at this point in time, but just kind of seeing what maybe they changed a couple things about a couple tees or a couple greens, or they removed a tree here and added a bunker there, or just, is it firm? Is it fast? Is it is it soft because of rain or whatever? How's the course going to play? And kind of start to prepare for what that looks like come game time on Thursday. So Tuesday is really kind of a big heavy day of practice, and then normally I work out almost every day. And some might be 45 minutes, but a lot of kind of 20-minute workouts, kind of just keeping my body moving and keeping it ready to take the abuse that we inflict upon it with a repetitive motion, shearing force around your spine to hit a golf ball. But our bodies are not designed to do any professional sport. We just contort and put them through this stuff, and then we have to put them back together after we get done with it. And so that's Tuesday, and then Wednesday is the Pro-Am day, and depending on the year, I've some years I've played in every single Wednesday Pro-Am, some years I've played in half of them, and some years you kind of don't play. You play in very few of them, and it's kind of all based on how you did last year. So that kind of depends, but that's the Pro-Am day. So that would be another day of practice and 18 holes. And so, that can be another long day, but you're trying to keep that one a little shorter because you want to be rested and ready to go on Thursday. So then Thursday is, round one. And again, it's normally, those are 10 plus hour days really, on tournament days between, preparing before you play, and then, it generally takes 5 hours to play, or somewhere right around that. And then typically we'll practice for, probably very briefly, some days, not at all, some days, 30 minutes, really no more than probably 75 minutes of practice afterwards, because it's already been a long day, before you even get to that point. And then there might be some workout, there might be some, body work and kind of physical therapy type thing to kind of put yourself back together and have your body performing at the highest level for the next day. So, and you kind of just rinse, repeat there, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Sunday there, obviously wouldn't be practice after Sunday. It'd be pack up and get on an airplane and go to the next stop, or go home, or go wherever else, life and golf takes you from there. So it's full weeks, and it's not, there's not a whole lot of downtime kind of in there. You get maybe a half a day of downtime somewhere in there, depending on tee times and practice structure.
It's it sounds exhausting, and just the not just the schedule, but like you're saying, I can only imagine the brutal wear and tear your body takes from that's just so much to put your body through.
Yeah, I mean, I tell one of the things that I tell people is, basically at a tour event, and this is probably some of my military mindset and kind of growing up in that environment, but I kind of do everything with a purpose. I mean, I eat with a purpose. I sleep with a purpose. I mean, that's a big one, is trying to get enough sleep. And, I get reminded frequently that I'm no longer a young person, and I am an old athlete. And so I have to, so sleep has become really a lot more important. I used to try and get about 7.5 hours of sleep, and now I'm, trying to get closer to 9 when I can, at events, just to have my body be a little bit more refreshed. So it's very regimented. Isn't exactly the right word, but it's very purposeful.
And you talked about, the impression I got is that you're playing a round of 18 holes, and then you're practicing afterwards. Is this kind of your own critique of yourself on where you need to improve, or do you have like coaches around you and support around you pointing things out? Like, what is that? How do you find those weak spots?
I'd say it's a little bit of both. The majority is, me, critiquing myself or thinking about the things that I need to do on this particular course. You might need to hit more 3-woods off the tee, or you might need to hit more draws or cuts, or shape the ball a different way, left to right or right to left, just for certain courses. You might have more of a wedge course. I definitely, when I'm playing my best, I'm spending a lot of time on wedges and kind of that inside 100 yards game. That's where you can really, that's where you really make a lot of gains in golf. I mean, you have to do the other stuff well, but if you can really tighten it up inside of 100 yards and make that as best as it can be, that's where you're going to really get a lot of scoring opportunities and shoot your lowest rounds. But I think that, I have coaches, I have a trainer, I have about a team of 7 or so that kind of work with me. Now, it's almost never that all 7 are with me at the same time. And my coach and trainer are probably the ones who come most often to tournament sites, but even that's, 3-4 times a year. And so it is mostly just, me on my own. And with video and technology that it is the way today, though, I mean, I can take a video of my swing, send it to my coach, and, 2 minutes later be on the phone talking to him about it. And 2 minutes after that, be back practicing with some, new idea or tip of how to tighten it up and make it just a little bit better. So that's definitely changed the game of golf in that regard, and how easy it is to transfer videos and view them, and certainly, slower motion cameras and more high speed, more high definition stuff makes it easier to see little things. And so you could certainly, paralysis by analysis kind of deal if you wanted to, but it's helpful to, be able to break that down when needed.
Mm. The thing I keep on coming back to in my mind is I'm floored by, to compete at this level, it's mind-boggling the amount of discipline and practice and just time that you need to have to get to this level. And I just keep on going back to, like, man, Naval Academy, probably not typical environment for someone who aspires to be a professional golfer. And then the military, for all intents and purposes, that was a 5-year break. And I just keep on thinking of, like, man, that's 5 years where your peer set was probably playing 24/7. And so it's just like, it's very, very crazy for me to think that you have achieved this with, I don't want to call that a handicap, because, like, I'm proud of my military service. I know you are. Like, it's not like that. But if I'm just purely looking at this from a golf perspective, I'm like, man, how the hell did this guy do this? And I'm wondering, there's obviously I'm focusing on what you gave up, but I'm curious, like, what did you take away from your military service? Like, what did you bring with you that has helped you as a professional golfer?
Well, I think that the first answer to that is time management. At the Naval Academy and in the Navy, if you don't manage your time, you kind of sink, right? Like, you have to be very intentional about where you spend your time, and so that's no different to being a professional golfer with the schedule that I just gave you. Yeah, obviously you have to manage that very, very well, and you don't have a whole lot of place for distractions or offshoots and tangents and that kind of thing. So that's certainly one of the things the Naval Academy taught me. Playing golf at the Naval Academy, we practiced for 2 hours a day. That was kind of the set aside, varsity athletic period was 2.5 hours, right? Well, every other Division I athlete's doing it for like 8 hours a day, right? They go to school part time and they play their sport full time, kind of thing, right? And, so that taught me how to get a lot done in a little amount of time. That taught me how to focus on the right things to play good golf, because there's always something else you want to work on. There's always more preparation that you could do. And there's a fine line between being prepared and being, kind of exhausted and spending too much time preparing to your own detriment. And so having just that, kind of 2.5 hour window at the Naval Academy to practice taught me how to do a lot in a little amount of time and how to focus on the right things. So that certainly is, one aspect of what I have taken away and what's helped me get where I am today, given the unique path that I took, right? Because I agree with you. I'm not going to say it was a setback or a detriment. It was what I signed up to do, and it was what I knew I wanted to do. And I'm, as you said, very proud of my naval service, and I enjoyed that time a lot. And have made, some of my best friends today were guys I served with, right? And so I wouldn't give that up. I'd go back. I'd do it all over the same way. But the other thing that the Navy kind of gave me was I travel better than most guys. I don't, jet lag doesn't affect me as much as it seems it does most people, or maybe I just know how to deal with it and what I need to do for my body to be fresh in that way. When we've played tournaments overseas, I've actually done quite well comparatively to my peer group, and I think that a lot of that has to do with having traveled to a lot of other countries, having gone on port visits, having lived those lifestyles, and kind of seen that away from home kind of thing. So my life experience that I gained in the Navy has certainly helped me with a competitive advantage. While it's not an exact golf skill, there's obviously a lot more that goes into being successful than just hitting the ball around. So those couple things I've definitely taken away from the Navy, from the Naval Academy, and have certainly helped me and enhanced my career as a golfer.
That's great. I'm aware, there's probably some listeners who aspire to some level of professional sports after their military service. And I'm curious if you have any advice, either as an athlete or just in the industry in general, for people who serve in the military that want to go into professional sports in some capacity.
I think, well, first of all, I'd pick a sport other than golf, because the numbers game in golf is just terrible. I mean, there's so many more people playing in the NFL and playing in Major League Baseball and every other professional sport you can kind of think of other than golf. But that's a tangent. So the thing for me when I think about that, and I've talked to a number of guys who at the Naval Academy who have aspired to professional athletics afterwards, and I think the best thing you can do is do your best in whatever you're doing at that moment in time, right? While being a service warfare officer didn't inherently give me anything, it didn't inherently gain me any greater skill as a golfer, I did the job as best as I could every day. And I think that's the mindset you're going to need whenever you go on to do whatever's next, right? And whether that's professional sports or business or government service in another capacity other than the military, whatever that looks like for each of us after the military, like, you're going to have to do your best to be successful. And so there's no reason to not do your best right now just because, well, this isn't what I really want to do, or I aspire to do X, Y, or Z later on. That's not going to help you in X, Y, and Z later on, because you're going to have developed habits of not caring about little things or not thinking that this is important and not trying your best. And so you're going to have to give your all to do professional athletics. There's no question about that, right? The 1% of the 1% of the 1% kind of thing when you go high school, college, professional level, right? So that's really the best advice that I can give people who are in the military or getting ready to graduate the Naval Academy or wherever, and are going to go on to have this service requirement that seemingly gets in the way of what you want to do next or professional athletics. But if you don't do your best now, then why are you just going to all of a sudden turn it on? When you get back to the athletic field or whatever it is. So that's really, I think, the habit that is the most important.
That's such a fantastic answer. I just love that mindset of excellence. And I notice in my own life the times where I'm just phoning it in, where I'm like, well, what does this matter? I'm just going to just coast on this. And I love that mindset of like, man, whatever you're doing, just kind of give it your all. And viewing that almost as the practice, like the practice is build the muscle of focusing on something and doing your best and pushing yourself. And I love that for listeners, because whether or not you aspire to golf or professional athletics in general, like whatever your career path is, as you just said, that is a mindset that you're building, a mindset that you can build in any location to help you out in what you do in the future. And I love that too, because it's like, man, I feel better about that when I'm doing my best at a job. Like, it doesn't feel good to just
exactly
coast
right.
by. It just feels kind of sleazy. What about, I also want to make space. You're involved in two organizations. One is the Billy Hurley III Foundation, which you started, and then you're also involved with Birdies for the Brave. What would you want listeners to know about both of those organizations?
Well, Birdies for the Brave is basically the military charity of the PGA Tour, right? So it's kind of the PGA Tour gives tons and tons of money, over $2 billion in the lifetime of the PGA Tour to charity, and certainly the lion's share of that in the last 10 to 15 years, and so Birdies for the Brave is kind of how the PGA Tour does military initiatives. That's kind of the place where that falls in the charitable mission of the tour. So certainly I'm involved with that as things are at tournaments, and as we have different initiatives throughout the year with that are run directly through the PGA Tour. But then it became kind of time to think about what we were going to do individually, and we started running this charity tournament, and then we said, well, if we're going to do a charity tournament, I guess we probably ought to just have a foundation so that we can run it all through a 501c3, and so what are we going to do with that, right? How are we going to do that? And that's where the Billy Hurley III Foundation came from. And really, our mission at the Billy Hurley III Foundation is to support, honor, and enhance the lives of military families. My wife and I look around when we were active duty, and now that we've been off active duty for close to almost 10 years now, the experiences and things that we've been afforded because of professional golf are extraordinary. I mean, I'll give you just one example. There was a tournament a number of years ago at Disney World, and we got a private guide through the parks. We went to like 3 or 4 parks in one day with a private guide to the front of the line, and his experiences are amazing, and they're only afforded to me because I just happen to be good at hitting a little white ball, better than most people in the world. And so we kind of set out to say, well, how can we do some of that for our military families? How can we give them experiences and opportunities that they wouldn't have, right? I mean, I look around at your average kind of E5, E6 guy who has got a couple of kids and is doing a great job on the ship or wherever in the military, and he's got a great attitude and wants to do the best he can, and I love that guy, you know what I mean, or gal, and I want, and that's what makes our military so successful and so great, are those people. But they're never going to get the experiences that I've been afforded to get to. So how can we raise some charitable dollars and give them those experiences. And so it's certainly been a learning curve of how to do that inside of the government, right? You have to kind of jump through the right hoops to be able to get to that point. But it's been really special to be able to, give a couple of Disney trips to some families and kind of do some other stuff, some scholarship based stuff for college and that kind of stuff through our foundation. So we just really want to figure out how do we, take the military family and care for the whole family unit, because that's the other thing about that, Justin, is for us, I mean, my wife and I, we were just your average, officer on the ship. I tried to, like we said, I tried to do the job the best I could, but I woke up every morning and just went to work and then at the same time left my wife with a, young child at home. And so, the family really serves as well. And I think that's something that's coming more to the forefront of our society, but for a while, I think it got lost and we just kind of thought about the service member. And so, we want to recognize and enhance the lives of those families as well, who really are the backbone that allow our service members to go forward and do the great job that they do to protect our country.
So the one of the last questions I wanted to ask, it's a little bit more personal for me, but I also know a lot of listeners are always asking about work-life balance. And from my perspective, I've got a 3-month-old baby right now, first one in the family for me. And I feel,
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. I feel this tension between, on the one hand, wanting to be present, not wanting to be away, wanting to work reasonable hours so I'm around him and my family. And then on the other hand, it's like, man, I want to be passionately pursuing a mission and a goal. Like, I want to set that example for him of high achievement and really going after it. And I don't know if you've faced a similar struggle, but you talked about being on the road, you talked about being away from your family, and I'm just kind of curious how you've approached that balance between, being around your family all the time versus the sacrifice necessary to achieve the incredible things that you've achieved, and the powerful example that sets for your family, for listeners, and for many people in the world.
Boy, that's a great question, and certainly one that I do not claim to have figured out. I mean, I'm certainly on the workaholic spectrum. No matter what I was doing, I would lean towards that and would have to be reined in away from that. And to your point, that has allowed me to be successful, I think. Right? That is, there's probably you can't skate by in professional athletics. You have to, we talked about sacrifice earlier, and frankly, one of the major sacrifices that I've observed in, certainly my own life, but also in other successful people's lives is their family took a toll for some of it, and there's, rewards on the other side of that potentially with different opportunities and whatnot. But certainly, there's a lot of similarities between tour wives and Navy wives. Their husbands are gone a lot. They tend to be kind of the personality structure of being independent and self-sufficient, so that, it does work when your husband's gone for a deployment or gone for, a 2-week stretch of tournaments or whatever. But, for me, I'll answer that question this way, that it's an always changing problem. And every stage of life, it manifests itself a little bit differently. And our kids are a little older, or getting older now. Our oldest is in 6th grade. And that's created a new set of challenges, a new set of, how are we going to do this, work-life balance thing now? What's that going to look like? It looks very different than when he was, 3-4 years old. We just packed him up in the car. We didn't have school to worry about, and we all traveled together. And we did a lot of traveling together for the first couple of years. And in my rookie year on tour, they traveled probably 80% of the time. It was almost full time. and so that was great. We got to be together as a family. We didn't have a whole lot of constraints, and from home or from school or whatever. And now it's shifted where they travel probably less than 20% of the time, and we've probably almost gone all the way to the other end of the spectrum, and that's school, and that's kids' activities and sports and all this other stuff going on. So I think I certainly, like I said, don't have a great answer for that, but I do know that it's an ever-changing problem, and there's kind of as soon as you think you got it figured out and something's working and you got that going, well, the new stage hits, and now you got to reinvent the wheel again and figure out what works for this particular stage, and that's I guess that's the fun of life and parenting and kind of all that. It certainly is a challenge, and it's like I said, just an ever-changing problem that requires new solutions continuously.
It's such a great answer, and I just noticed when you say that, I always desire to have this like one answer, one thing that I do and I'm done, and I think that the nuance that you bring to that answer is like it is always changing. Like we're changing, our family's changing, life's changing, and so it's kind of like a commitment to something, but being able to adapt it as everything changes. Well, I know that we're a little bit over on time, so I just want to ask one last question, which is I always like to leave the last question open-ended, and that is, is there anything we didn't cover that you want to make sure listeners know, or is there any just final parting thoughts that you'd like to leave with listeners before we wrap up?
Oh, I think that, I think there's two things in that regard, and the first is that I always want to be very, very clear about what I've done and what I tried to do. Sometimes people ask me, did you try and get out of your military commitment, or did you try and something like that? And that's just totally the wrong question, right? Like I never tried to get out of my military commitment. I was committed to serving, committed to doing what I signed up to do. And like I said earlier, I would never, I wouldn't trade my military service for those 5 years back of playing golf at this point. I mean, certainly I have the benefit of having been successful and made it to the PGA Tour to be able to say that, but I really enjoyed my time in the military, in the Navy. And I, frankly, I'd probably still be in the Navy if I didn't want to play golf. We never really had a serious conversation about staying in after 5 years because we knew we wanted to transition and go. I knew I wanted to give golf a shot, and I kind of owed that to myself to try and see where that led. And fortunately, it's led to a nice career, and careers are always changing and morphing, and so we're trying to reinvent that as well, and continue to see what that looks like now as a quote old athlete, right? But so that's kind of the first thing that I always want to be clear about when I get the opportunity to share my side of things, because it's not always viewed in that light, and people sometimes use terms that I'm not really happy about when we start talking about this stuff. But and then the final thing that I, obviously I think you'll agree with this, but we want everybody to know: beat Army.
What a great note to end on. I love that. Well, Billy, I know that your time is scarce. I appreciate your making the room to chat with me and share your advice with listeners.
Yeah, great, Justin. It was fun to be with you, and look forward to people hearing this and learning more about my journey.
Surface.
Well, thank you so much for listening and for supporting Beyond the Uniform. Beyond the Uniform is produced and edited by me, Justin Nassiri. Our staff is entirely part-time. They do this on nights and weekends out of the goodness of their hearts to give back to the military community. Our director of outreach is Steve Bain, who relentlessly books guests, finds sponsors, puts together our newsletter, and thousands of other critical tasks every single week, all behind the scenes to keep Beyond the Uniform running smoothly. Our editor is Kathleen Dillon, who listens to and transcribes transcribes every single episode to help out those who don't have the time to listen to the show. It has a major impact on our site's SEO value, which helps people find us through Google. Our data analytics and insights advisor is Andrew Woolridge, who pores over the data each and every month to help us better understand how to best serve the Beyond the Uniform audience. Our digital production work is done by Michael Cummings, who puts together custom artwork for every episode. If you're enjoying Beyond the Uniform, the best way to help us out is by telling your friends and fellow service members and veterans. iTunes reviews, believe it or not, have a big impact on getting the word out as well. So if you have a chance to leave a positive review, that is greatly appreciated. If you know of a business that would like to get their product or service in front of a military audience, we are always on the lookout for sponsors, which helps us subsidize the cost of putting this show together. And if you haven't yet signed up for our newsletter, you can do so at beyondtheuniform.io. We send out a newsletter twice a month, and it is a treasure trove of helpful information for your civilian career and transition. And be sure to check out our coaching program, where you can be connected with a subsidized, professional, certified executive and career coach to help you in your career decision making. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back next week with more stories from military veterans about their civilian career. Take care.